Robert Mason is the kind of man who rarely stops, especially not on the highway. But today, a flat tire changes everything. As he stands beside his luxury SUV, heat radiating from the asphalt, a boy no older than 10 appears out of nowhere, tools in hand, and quietly begins to help. Robert's initial surprise turns into silent gratitude, but it's what happens after the tire's fixed that shakes him to his core. The boy reaches into his pocket, pulls out an old Purple Heart medal, and says softly, "I think this belongs to you." Suddenly, the past Robert buried with fallen comrades in Afghanistan comes rushing back. The medal, the ambush, the woman who saved him, and now, this boy? Who is this child? And how did he end up with something Robert lost halfway around the world? The answer unravels a story of sacrifice, forgotten letters, and a second chance at family. One moment of kindness unlocks a lifetime of memories, and a future Robert never imagined. You'll want to stay until the end for the twist that changes everything. Subscribe now for more real, powerful stories that restore your faith in humanity. The sun beat down mercilessly on the edge of the I-8 freeway outside San Diego. Cars roared past, indifferent to the silver Lexus SUV parked on the shoulder with one tire blown clean off the rim. Robert Mason stood beside it, sleeves rolled, hands on hips, trying not to curse out loud. His watch, a sleek tactical design with military roots, blinked 11:47 a.m. He had a board meeting in 30 minutes, but that wasn't what had him pacing. It was the silence. Not the kind you hear, but the kind that creeps into your chest. The kind that follows you from the battlefield and hides in luxury boardrooms, waiting to surface when the world goes still. Robert was 55 now, clean-cut, broad-shouldered. His tailored button-down clung to his back, damp from sweat, but his mind wasn't on the heat. It hadn't been for years. As CEO of Ardent Tech Defense Systems, Robert was a name in the industry, respected, feared even. But not today. Today, he was just a man with a flat tire. And ghosts. "Need some help?" came a voice, bright and boyish, from behind the slope of the roadside gravel. Robert turned. A skinny boy, maybe 10, with shaggy brown hair and grease on his hands, stood there holding a toolbox nearly as big as his torso. His sneakers were too big, his jeans were ripped at the knees, and his smile, it was far too kind for this world. "You any good with tires?" Robert asked warily. The boy nodded, proud. "My mom taught me, and I helped Mr. Dale at the camp. He lets me fix up old bikes and sometimes cars if the engines aren't too bad." "Camp?" Robert echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Refugee site. Up past that hill." The boy jerked his thumb toward a ridge. "I lived there with my sister and mom. We used to have a house, but not anymore." Robert hesitated. He could have called roadside assistance, but the look in the boy's eyes, confident, eager, reminded him of someone. Maybe someone he once was. "You got a name?" Robert asked. "Alex," the boy replied, then crouched by the flat tire, opening the toolbox. Robert watched in silence as Alex worked, focused, quick, and clearly familiar with the process. The jack slid under the axle, bolts loosened one by one, hands steady even in the heat. Robert leaned against the hood, arms crossed, thinking. It wasn't just the tire. It wasn't just the heat. It was something about the boy, something deeper. "So," Robert said softly, "your mom, she teaches you all this?" Alex glanced up. "Yeah, she used to be a medic or something. Helped soldiers. She's hurt now, though. She fell off a ladder cleaning offices. Broke her leg in 2 places. Can't walk much." There was a pause. Heavy, as if the wind itself paused to listen. "She sounds strong," Robert murmured. Alex nodded, tightening the last bolt. "She is." Then, as if it were nothing, As if it didn't carry the weight of decades, Alex reached into the toolbox and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I almost forgot," he said. "I found this in one of her old bags. She said she didn't know how it got there, but I think it might be yours." He opened the pouch. Robert's breath caught in his throat. Inside was a scratched, weather-worn purple heart. His name engraved on the back. Robert J. Mason. He hadn't seen it in years. Lost it in a medevac scramble after the ambush near Marja. The day his best friend, Nolan Reyes, bled out in the dirt while Robert screamed for help that never came fast enough. Robert stepped forward slowly. He took the medal into his hand like it was glass. His voice cracked. Where did you say your mom was a medic?" Alex looked confused, but answered honestly. "Afghanistan. She volunteered for something called Operation Warden." The words hit like a brick. Robert's knees almost buckled. Sophia. That name thundered in his skull. She was there. She was the one who dragged him out of the dust, who pressed her hands into his wound, who whispered, "Stay with me, soldier," when he begged to let go. And then she disappeared. Does your mom's name happen to be Sophia?" Robert asked, barely managing the words. Alex blinked, stunned. "Yeah, Sophia Alvarez. Do you know her?" Robert didn't answer. He was staring at the medal, trembling. In that moment, the boy who fixed his tire had done more than offer help. He'd opened a door to a past Robert had buried in sand and blood. And what lay behind it was only just beginning to unfold. Robert stood there, staring down at the boy with trembling hands and a throat too tight to speak. The weight of the Purple Heart in his palm felt heavier than it ever had in combat. Memories surged like a wave, sand in his eyes, blood on his chest, and a soft voice whispering, "You're going to be all right, Robert. Just hold on." And then, silence. Years of it. He finally spoke, quietly. "Where's your mom now?" Alex wiped his hands on his jeans and nodded toward the ridge. "Back at the camp. She doesn't walk too well right now, but she still tries to help people. Even hurt, she finds a way." Robert's voice barely held. "Sophia Alvarez." The boy nodded slowly. "That's her full name. You knew her?" "I did," Robert replied, almost in a whisper, "a long time ago." Alex's eyes searched his face, clearly trying to connect dots that hadn't yet formed. Robert forced a breath and looked toward the hill. Would she be okay with a visitor? Alex shrugged a little. "She's pretty tired most days, but I think she'd like to see a friend." Then, as if struck by a thought, he added, "Wait, you were in the military?" Robert nodded. "Yes, I served in Afghanistan. Lost that medal in 2011. Thought it was gone forever." Alex's eyes widened. "That's the year Mom came back. She never talked much about it, but she kept some old stuff. I found that medal in a duffel bag with sand in the bottom." A slow, stunned silence fell between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. Robert looked down the road, then back at his car, then at the boy. "You mind riding with me?" he asked gently. Alex grinned. "Sure, but I'll have to guide you through the back road. The regular way's blocked with tents." They drove in silence for a while, the car moving slowly over gravel paths. The closer they got, the more signs of hardship appeared. Makeshift shelters, laundry strung between trees, small fires for cooking. It wasn't chaos, but it was clearly survival. Finally, they pulled up to a worn trailer surrounded by a small garden of herbs and plastic water jugs. A girl, about the same age as Alex, stood on the porch feeding a cat. She looked up and squinted. "Sis," Alex called, "this is Mr. Mason. He knew Mom back in Afghanistan." The girl's name was Amelia. She nodded politely but didn't speak right away. Robert followed Alex up the short steps and stopped just outside the door. Alex opened it. "Mom, there's someone here you might remember." There was a pause, and then a soft voice replied, "Let him in, sweetheart." Robert stepped into the dimly lit trailer, and there she was, lying back on a narrow cot, propped up with pillows, a bandage around one leg, her face thinner than he remembered but unmistakably hers. Sophia. Her eyes met his. They widened, and her hand instinctively reached toward her chest. "Robert?" she said, breathless. He stepped closer. "It's me." Tears brimmed instantly in her eyes. She covered her mouth with one hand, trembling. "I thought... They told me you didn't make it out. They said you were gone." "I nearly was," Robert said, gently kneeling beside her. "You saved me, Sophia. You dragged me from the fire. I never forgot your face. But after the blast, everything went dark." She let out a soft laugh, choked with emotion. "I searched for you, for months, but no letters came back, and then I stopped hoping." Robert looked around the small room, the medical supplies neatly organized on a tray, the children's drawings taped to the wall. "You built a life anyway." "I had to," she whispered. "They needed me." There was another pause, heavier this time. Sophia looked toward the other room, where Alex and Amelia now sat listening quietly. Her gaze lingered on Robert's face. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she said. Robert leaned forward, his voice low and tender. "Sophia, are they mine?" She inhaled deeply. "I didn't know for sure. Until just now." He swallowed. The medal was still in his hand. He looked down at it, then back into her eyes. "I want to know them. I want to know you again." Tears streamed freely now down her face. "Then you're not too late." Robert sat in the faded armchair across from Sophia, the Purple Heart resting gently between them on a small table scratched with age and memory. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Outside, the faint rustle of wind moved through trees, and Alex's voice could be heard playing with Amelia near the garden hose. But inside the trailer, time moved differently. Sophia leaned back against her pillow, eyes never leaving Robert. "You look tired, but stronger somehow." Robert smiled faintly. "War does that. And peace. Peace takes longer to learn." She let out a soft breath, one that trembled slightly. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again. After the evacuation, you vanished, and no one could tell me anything." "They didn't know," Robert said, his voice low. "I was listed MIA for 3 weeks. I woke up in a field hospital barely breathing. By the time I got back stateside, I didn't know how to find you. And by then," Sophia added softly, "I was already 2 months pregnant." Robert looked up, stunned. "You didn't try to contact me?" "I did," she whispered. "I wrote letters, every week. For a year. I sent them to your last known base, to the Red Cross, even to the VA. Nothing came back." He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "None of those letters ever reached me." "I figured," she said with a sad smile, "but after a while, I stopped hoping." Her voice cracked at the end, and she reached for a glass of water, her hand shaking. Robert gently helped her, holding the cup steady as she sipped. "You named him Alex," he said, trying to steady his own breathing. "He's a lot like you," Sophia replied, her eyes warming. "Quiet, kind, always fixing things with his hands. And Amelia, she's fierce. That's all me." Robert laughed gently, shaking his head. "They're both incredible." "They've had to be," she said, growing serious. "We've moved 6 times in the last 5 years. After my back injury, I couldn't keep my nursing license active. No money for daycare, no stable job, no home for longer than a few months. Robert looked around the tiny space. "You've done everything on your own." "I did what I had to," she replied. "But that medal, the day Alex found it, I swear he just knew it meant something." He nodded slowly, lifting the medal again, running his thumb over the inscription. "This isn't just a medal. It's the only piece I had of the man I used to be, before I lost you." There was a long pause, heavy with emotion. Sophia's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she reached for a worn leather bag under the cot and pulled out a faded photograph. It was a picture of them. Robert in uniform, smiling shyly, his arm draped around a younger, glowing Sophia. It was the night before deployment. Behind them, a sandbag wall and string lights from a camp cafe. Robert's breath hitched. "You kept this." "It was the only thing that reminded me love was real," she whispered. The trailer door creaked open, and Alex poked his head in. "Mom, do we still have peanut butter sandwiches?" "In the fridge, sweetheart," Sophia said gently. Alex turned to Robert. "You want one?" Robert chuckled. "I'd love one." When the door clicked shut again, Robert leaned forward. "Sophia, what do they know about me?" "Only that their father was a soldier, brave and gone." He nodded solemnly. "Then I'd like to change that, if you'll let me." Sophia blinked, lips parting again. "What are you saying?" "I want to be here," he said firmly, emotion rising. "For you, for them. I know I missed years I can't get back, but I don't want to miss another day." Her eyes shimmered. "Robert, that's not a promise you make lightly." "I'm not," he replied softly. "I've faced bullets and fire and grief that nearly broke me, but nothing ever made me feel as lost as the moment I saw that medal in Alex's Casta's hand and knew it had found its way home before I did." She couldn't speak, just nodded, tears finally falling freely. Robert reached across the table, slowly taking her hand. "Let me help now, Sophia. Let me carry what I should have carried back then." Her fingers closed around his. "Then start with dinner. These kids eat like wolves." He smiled through the tears. "Deal." As they stood together in the small kitchen space, him chopping vegetables, her giving instructions from the stool, something unfamiliar filled the room. Not nostalgia, not regret. Hope. The next morning, Robert was up early. The air outside the trailer was crisp, tinged with the scent of dew and sun-baked metal. Birds chirped from a power line nearby as the sun rose slowly over the modest migrant camp. He stood quietly in the doorway, sipping coffee from a tin mug, watching Alex help Amelia comb her tangled hair. It was a scene so ordinary, yet it pierced something deep inside him. He remembered waking up in field tents in Kandahar, the sound of helicopters thudding in the distance, the smell of dust, the adrenaline that never quite left his veins. But this was different. It was peace wrapped in small voices and stubborn love. Behind him, Sophia moved slowly from the bedroom area. She winced slightly but managed a warm smile. "You're up early." Robert turned, nodding. "Habit, I guess. But this time the sunrise didn't come with gunfire." She chuckled softly. "That's one blessing we hold on to." He gestured to the kids. "They're amazing. The way they take care of each other. It's not just survival. It's love." Sophia lay and against the counter, folding her arms. "They've had to grow up too fast. I tried to shield them from the worst, but the world doesn't wait for children to be ready." Robert nodded. It never did. After breakfast, Robert asked if he could take the kids into town. "I want to get them some proper shoes and maybe a few school supplies. Nothing fancy." Sophia hesitated. They've never been in a big store. They might get overwhelmed. "I'll go slow," he promised. "No pressure, just a little trip." Sophia looked at Alex and Amelia, now playing with an old soccer ball in the yard. "All right," she said quietly. "Just bring them back full of smiles." Downtown San Diego wasn't far, but it felt like a different world. Alex gripped Robert's hand tightly as they walked into the first store, a discount shoe outlet. Amelia, curious and wide-eyed, kept touching the racks like they were made of gold. "You guys okay?" Robert asked, bending slightly to meet their eyes. Alex nodded, though his jaw was tight. "There's so much." Robert knelt down. "Then we take it one step at a time, all right? This isn't about stuff. It's about what makes you feel safe, warm, strong." Slowly, the tension eased. Amelia giggled as she tried on pink sneakers with sparkles, stomping around like a superhero. Alex picked a pair of sturdy black runners, the kind that looked like they could handle both play and responsibility. As they walked toward the checkout counter, something caught Robert's eye, a wall of journals and sketchbooks. He picked up a navy blue one, the cover soft and blank. "Do either of you like to draw?" he asked. Alex nodded shyly. "Sometimes, when Mom's resting." Robert handed him the sketchbook. "Then, maybe, you can start keeping track of what matters, even the little things." Alex clutched it to his chest like it was treasure. "Thank you." The ride back was filled with laughter and spilled grape juice from the convenience store. Amelia fell asleep against Robert's arm, her tiny hand still clutching her new shoes. And Alex. He didn't say much, but his smile said everything. Back at the trailer, Sophia stepped outside when she heard the car door. "How'd it go?" she asked, cautiously hopeful. Robert opened the door. "I think we made a few memories." Alex rushed over and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Mom, he got me a drawing book." Sophia looked up at Robert, overwhelmed. "That's more than a gift. That's a future." Later that night, after the kids were tucked in and the dishes were done, Robert sat across from Sophia at the small table again. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what you said, about trying to protect them." She tilted her head, listening. "I wasn't here when it mattered most, but now that I'm back, I want to help shape what comes next." Sophia looked down, folding a cloth in her lap. "And what does that mean, Robert?" "It means I want to provide more than groceries, more than rides to town. I want to offer a real home, not just a roof, but stability, education, health care, the kind of life they deserve." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And us?" Robert reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. "I don't know where we go from here, but I know this. I never stopped caring, and I will never walk away again." Sophia's eyes welled with tears. "Then let's take it slow. For them. For us." Robert nodded, his voice steady. One sunrise at a time. The next few days unfolded like the quiet hum of a healing heart. Robert came by often, helping Sophia with errands, sharing meals, and sometimes just sitting outside the trailer as the sun dipped low over the camp. For the first time in years, there was a laughter in his chest, not the kind he forced at boardroom events, but something softer, more human. One afternoon, as the breeze rustled gently through the dry grass, Amelia ran to him, clutching a worn-out backpack. "Mr. Robert, look what I found under Mommy's bed," she said, eyes wide with excitement. He raised a brow, curious. "What is it, sweetheart?" She plopped it in his lap. "It's really old, but it smells like sand, like the beach, but not a nice beach." Sophia, overhearing from the porch, stiffened. Robert unzipped the bag slowly. The canvas was stiff, edges faded. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a set of dog tags and a photograph. 2 soldiers grinning in front of a helicopter, and beneath it, carefully tucked in a small side pocket, was something that made Robert's breath catch in his throat. A purple heart. His purple heart. He stared at it silently for a long time, memories surging up like a storm tide. Dust, gunfire, the sound of someone screaming his name over the radio, a medic pulling him to safety. a blur of pain and red and light. Where did this come from? His voice cracked. Sophia stepped closer, her hands clenched at her sides. I didn't know it was yours, I swear. Robert looked up at her. You kept it. She nodded, slowly. After that last ambush, they told me everyone on your team was either killed or missing. I stayed back to help the wounded. I found that medal in the chaos, covered in blood, right where we last saw you. I didn't know whose it was until Alex handed it to you. Robert swallowed, emotion rising in his throat. And you never tried to find out? I did, she said quietly. I wrote letters, asked around, but no one replied. I thought maybe the silence meant the worst. He turned the medal over in his palm, eyes glistening. This was the only thing I had left from that day. It's yours, she said softly, stepping back. I never meant to keep it hidden. Robert looked at her, then at the children playing in the dust just a few feet away. And yet, it brought me back to you. Sophia blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold something in. I guess it did. Later that evening, Robert sat alone on the steps, medal in hand, when Alex joined him. The boy didn't say anything for a while, just watched the sun sinking into the horizon. I read about those medals once, Alex said. Says you get one if you get hurt real bad in war. Robert nodded. That's right. Were you scared? The boy asked gently. Robert sighed. Yeah, I was. But I wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of never coming back right, scared of forgetting what mattered. Alex kicked a pebble with his shoe. You didn't forget. You remembered Mom. Robert turned to him. You know, I didn't just remember her. I remembered everything we wanted, everything we were building. I just buried it when I thought she was gone. Alex smiled, then hesitated. She still talks about you sometimes, when she thinks we're asleep. Robert blinked hard. Does she? Alex nodded. She said you were brave, not because of medals, but because you looked scared, and still ran into danger to help someone. Robert's throat tightened. That someone was her. The silence stretched between them, filled with the kind of understanding words couldn't shape. After a moment, Alex stood. I'm glad you're back. Robert looked up. So am I. As Alex walked away, Robert held the Purple Heart close to his chest. It wasn't just a medal anymore. It was a thread, fragile but unbroken, connecting him to the people he thought he'd lost forever. Inside the trailer, Sophia was watching from the window, one hand pressed over her heart. She could see it now, the man she once knew, slowly becoming whole again. The next morning, the sunlight bled softly through the tarp over Sophia's trailer window. Robert stood by the makeshift kitchen counter, carefully pouring coffee into two mismatched mugs. The scent was rich, comforting, familiar in a way that tugged gently at old memories. Sophia entered the room, her limp more noticeable than usual. She wore a faded t-shirt and jeans that clung to her frame with the exhaustion of someone who had been surviving far too long. You didn't have to make that, she said, rubbing her arm with a slow, tender motion. Robert handed her the mug. I wanted to. You always made it for the whole squad, remember? Even in that busted field tent. Her smile was small, but real. Yeah. I figured if I couldn't fix wounds fast enough, at least I could warm their hands. They sat quietly for a moment, the kind of silence that carried weight and meaning. Robert looked at her hand, wrapped loosely in gauze. That from the accident? He asked gently. She nodded, sipping. Got caught under a forklift at the plant a few weeks ago. Nothing major, just enough to slow me down. He hesitated. You're still working construction? Factory shift. Not official, though, she said, her voice low. No papers means I don't get protections, but it puts food on the table. His chest tightened. Sophia, you saved lives in Afghanistan. You were decorated. You deserve more than this. She looked at him then, her eyes tired but clear. Deserve doesn't always mean you get it. You of all people should know that. He swallowed hard, nodding. I do. That's why I'm here now. She shook her head. No, you're here because of a tire and a medal. That doesn't mean you're staying. The words landed with quiet precision, but there was no malice in her tone. Only truth. Just then, the door creaked open. Alex and Amelia tumbled in, breathless and giggling, their cheeks flushed from the morning air. Mr. Robert, Amelia chirped, holding something behind her back. Robert raised an eyebrow. What have you got there? With a mischievous grin, she presented a worn, spiral notebook, its pages dog-eared and speckled with pencil smudges. It's my picture journal, she said proudly. Want to see? He nodded eagerly. Absolutely. She flipped through the pages, each one filled with crayon drawings of their small world, the trailer, the food line, her mom resting, and then him. A sketch of a man standing next to a car with a flat tire, medal in hand, a little boy looking up at him. Sophia stiffened. You drew this? Robert asked softly. Uh-huh. And look. Amelia pointed to the corner of the page where a small heart was scribbled in red. I put your name here so I'd remember. He leaned closer. His name, Robert, was written in shaky but clear letters. But what stopped him cold was the page just behind it. Another drawing, faded and older. It showed a woman in uniform, hand on her belly, standing in front of a tent. The word Charles was crossed out. Below it, in darker ink, someone had written Robert instead. His heart skipped. Sophia reached for the book, her voice a quiet whisper. I didn't know she still had that. Robert looked up slowly. What is this, Sophia? Her hands trembled slightly as she took the book. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know what to do. You were gone. I thought maybe I'd name him after you, but then they told me you died, so I tried to move on. I called him Alex. Robert felt like the ground had shifted under him. You mean, Alex is mine? Sophia hesitated, then nodded, wordlessly. The room was suddenly still, even the kids sensing the weight of what had been spoken. Robert turned to Alex, who stood frozen, mouth slightly open. I'm your dad? He asked, voice barely audible. Alex blinked. I don't know. I mean, maybe? Sophia placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure, until I knew if you wanted to be part of his life. Robert fell back into the chair, stunned. Emotions warred in his chest. Regret, hope, guilt, and something else, warm and terrifying. Love. He looked at Alex, who shuffled closer, uncertain. I don't know how to be a dad, Robert said honestly, but I want to try. Alex gave him a tiny, hopeful smile. I think I want that too. Sophia turned away, wiping at her eyes. In that fragile moment, the broken years between them started to mend. Not fully, not yet, but enough to believe it was possible. The old, rusted fan in the corner whirred softly, filling the small trailer with a steady hum as Sophia sat across from Robert at the wobbly kitchen table. Outside, the desert wind kicked up dust in lazy spirals, painting the early afternoon in faded gold. Inside, the air was still, heavy with everything unsaid. Robert held the weathered notebook in his hands, flipping back through the pages Amelia had shown him. Each sketch, each word told a story that had unfolded without him. He looked up at Sophia, his voice tender, careful. Why didn't you try to find me, Sophia, after the war? She closed her eyes, breathed in slowly. I did, Robert. I wrote letters. I sent them to every address I could find back when I thought maybe the army had been wrong. But they never came back. No replies. He sat back, stunned. I never saw a single one. She opened a drawer behind her and pulled out a small bundle of envelopes, still sealed. Each one had his name in her delicate handwriting, postmarked, returned. They found their way back to me. I just stopped trying after a while. I thought maybe you moved on, or didn't want to be found. His throat tightened. He took the stack, running his fingers over the edges. I didn't move on, Soph. I couldn't. I thought you had, or worse, that you hadn't survived either. Their eyes met across years of silence. You saved my life, he whispered. I should have come back for you. She looked down, blinking fast. I didn't need saving, Robert. I needed the truth. A knock came at the door, soft but firm. Alex poked his head in. Hey, Amelia found that medal again. She wants to show it to you. Properly. Sophia nodded, wiping her eyes. Tell her we'll be right there, sweetheart. When Alex vanished, Robert leaned in. Let me help now. Not because I owe you, but because I care. For you, for them. Let me try. She studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. One day at a time. They stepped outside together. Amelia stood proudly next to a small fold-out table, the Purple Heart resting on a red cloth-like treasure. Alex hovered nearby, nervously holding a notebook to his chest. I polished it, Amelia said, beaming. Now it looks important again. Robert knelt. It always was important, kiddo, but you've made it shine brighter than ever. Alex looked up at him. You said you want to try being a dad. So, I made this. It's kind of like a plan. He handed Robert the notebook, freshly filled with a new list. Ways to be a good dad. Robert read it aloud, smiling at the entries. Number 1. Don't yell unless it's funny. Number 2. Make pancakes on Saturdays. Number 3. Help with math, but don't do it for me. The last one read, Number 7. Say you're proud, even when it's small. Robert's voice caught. He reached out, gently pulled Alex into a hug. I'm proud of you, son. Already. The boy held on tightly. That night, as stars blanketed the sky, Robert sat with Sophia on the trailer steps. The kids were asleep inside. The desert had grown quiet, peaceful in its own lonely way. I'm selling the place, Robert said softly. The company. All of it. Sophia turned. What? Why? Because none of it matters if I don't know the people who matter to me. I've spent years building machines to protect strangers. And I forgot how to protect the people right in front of me. She studied his face, as if trying to recognize the man she used to know within the one beside her now. And what do you want now? I want to build something real, he said. With you. With them. If you'll let me. A long silence passed. Then Sophia rested her head gently on his shoulder. You always were stubborn, she murmured. He smiled, resting his cheek against her hair. Still am. The wind rustled the dry grass nearby, and in that moment, two souls who had carried each other through fire and loss finally sat in peace, not as ghosts of who they'd been, but as people who still had something left to give. The next morning, the desert woke up in a quiet haze of light, as if the sun itself were cautiously hopeful. Inside the trailer, the smell of eggs and toast filled the cramped kitchen, where Sophia stirred a pan with one hand and balanced a cup of instant coffee with the other. Robert sat at the small table, reviewing documents on a battered laptop he'd brought in from his car, but his eyes kept drifting away from the screen, toward the sounds of Alex laughing in the back room and the way Amelia gently hummed as she brushed her mother's hair. Didn't know a morning could feel like this, Robert said, his voice almost surprised. Sophia glanced over her shoulder. Like what? Like it matters. She said nothing, but a soft smile flickered on her lips. She set down the pan, wiped her hands, and leaned on the counter. You keep showing up like this. We might just believe you. He looked up, more serious now. And I'll keep showing up. After breakfast, they took a walk around the edge of the camp. Sophia pointed out landmarks. The small rec room run by volunteers, the makeshift clinic, the corner where a woman sold second-hand shoes out of milk crates. Robert listened closely, watching how everyone seemed to greet Sophia with warmth, like family. It stirred something in him, a kind of ache, a quiet admiration. People respect you here, he said. You built something. Sophia shook her head gently. We just survived together, that's all. But Robert knew better. Surviving wasn't easy, especially not with kids, and especially not with a past like theirs. Later that afternoon, Robert returned with a surprise. A borrowed van from a friend in town. He'd packed it with tools, notebooks, games, a foldable table, and enough fresh groceries to last a week. Amelia's eyes lit up as she sifted through watercolor paints and sketch pads. You brought all this? For you, Robert said softly, to give you space to imagine. And for Alex, a starter tool set, the kind with real weight, not plastic. For fixing more than tires, Robert added, smiling. Alex held it reverently, then ran his fingers along the wrench. These are real. You are too, Robert replied. Real strong, real kind. Don't forget it. That evening, the four of them sat outside beneath a makeshift canopy. The sun was dipping low, painting the trailer in rose gold light. Sophia strummed a guitar Robert hadn't even known she had. Amelia curled up with a sketch pad, and Alex leaned against Robert's side, watching the sky turn darker. Robert told them stories from the war, not the violent ones, but the quiet ones, like the night he and Sophia sat under the stars, trading songs in 3 languages, or the time she smuggled chocolate bars in her medic kit for a group of scared young soldiers. You were the heart of that unit, he told her softly. She didn't answer, just kept strumming. Then, without warning, Alex asked, Did you love her then? Robert turned to him, caught off guard, but the boy's expression was genuine, open, curious. Yes, Robert said, his voice steady. I did, and I still do. Sophia stopped playing. The silence hung for a moment. Then Amelia whispered, Did you love us too? Even when you didn't know? Robert looked at both of them, eyes glassy. I didn't know you existed, he said gently, but I think I've loved you from the moment I saw you. I just didn't understand it yet. Alex blinked fast, then wiped at his cheek with the back of his hand. Sophia set the guitar down slowly. They've been through a lot, Robert. I have too. I know, he replied quietly. Let me earn your trust, not demand it. She gave him a long look. You're doing better than I expected. The moment felt full of unfinished history, full of quiet hope. Just then, a car pulled up near the edge of the camp. A man stepped out, tall, fit, military posture. He wore a visitor badge and held a folder under one arm. Robert squinted. Is that? Sophia's face went pale. Commander Lewis. Old friend of yours? He was there, the night you were injured. He thought you died. Robert's expression shifted as the man approached. Looks like the past is finally catching up, Robert said softly. Sophia nodded. Let's see if it's friend or foe. They stood together. As Lewis crossed the dust, his eyes locked on Robert, recognition dawning slowly, like a ghost returning from the grave. Commander Lewis stood still for a long moment, dust swirling around his boots as the wind picked up across the desert lot. His face was carved from the years, rigid jawline, gray peppering his temples and sharp eyes trained on Robert like he wasn't sure whether to salute or square up. "Robert Mason," Lewis finally said, his voice slow, heavy with disbelief. "You're alive." Robert nodded, his expression unreadable. "Didn't plan on disappearing. It just happened." Lewis took a step closer, the folder still tucked under his arm. "That blast report said you were dead. There was blood, no contact, nothing. We gave you a medal. We mourned you." Sophia stepped slightly in front of the children. Her tone was cautious. "He tried reaching out. Letters didn't go through. You know how the field was back then." Lewis turned to her, then looked at the kids. "They yours?" Sophia placed a protective hand on Amelia's shoulder. "Mine." Robert added gently, "Ours." That word, ours, hung in the air like a question no one wanted to answer. Lewis's brows lifted. He wasn't hostile, but he wasn't smiling either. "I'm not here to judge, just surprised. You show up out of nowhere with a new family, and the media's buzzing again about Mason Defense, you donating supplies, teaching skills, making speeches." His tone edged toward suspicion. Robert stayed calm. "None of this is for press. You know me better than that." Lewis crossed his arms. "I knew a soldier who'd take a bullet for his team. But this—" He motioned to the trailer, to the kids. "This looks like a rebranding campaign." Sophia stiffened. Robert's voice dropped, rough and deeply honest. "I came back because of a medal, one I didn't know I lost. That boy," he gestured to Alex, "found it, gave it back, and brought with it everything I buried. I didn't come for headlines. I came for truth." Lewis studied him. "Still the same, aren't you? Always giving speeches when silence might work better." Robert chuckled faintly. "You never liked my talking, but you listened." Sophia stepped in, her voice clear and steady. "He didn't ask for this attention. He's been helping, quietly, with his hands, not just his money. And believe me, Robert Mason doesn't need saving. But he came back to save us anyway." Alex glanced up at Lewis. "He fixed more than our tire. He fixed the way we feel." Lewis softened slightly. The edge in his eyes eased. He glanced at the folder, then handed it to Robert. "I didn't come here for a fight. I came with these. Your discharge documents, finally updated. And a request. There's a memorial in 2 weeks. The old unit's gathering." Robert opened the folder slowly. His breath caught when he saw the updated status. Returned. Alive. Honorable. Lewis added quietly, "It's your name on the wall we've been saluting all these years. Thought maybe it was time you saw what you meant to us." Robert closed the folder gently, then nodded. "I'll come." They shook hands. Not formally, not rigidly. It was the shake of two men who had seen things they never talked about, and still found the courage to reconnect. After Lewis left, the mood in the camp shifted. Sophia leaned against the trailer door, watching the dust settle. "He didn't believe you at first," she murmured. "He didn't have to. He believed enough to listen," Robert replied, quietly reflective. Later that night, the fire pit glowed warm under the stars. Amelia painted on scrap paper using the new watercolors, while Alex polished the old medal Robert had left on the table. "Why do they call it a Purple Heart?" Alex asked, his voice soft. Robert looked at him thoughtfully. "Because it's given for sacrifice. Pain. Love, really. For choosing to stand when you could have run." Alex nodded slowly. "Then I think you should give one to Mom." Sophia looked up, startled. "Alex!" He cut in gently. "You got hurt too. You lost things, and you stood anyway." Robert swallowed the lump in his throat. He's not wrong. He reached into his pocket, pulled the medal toward him, and turned it in his palm. Then he stood and walked over to Sophia, kneeling slowly before her. With deep emotion in his voice, he said, "This was given to me for surviving. But if I've learned anything, surviving is easier than staying, and you stayed. For them. For us." He placed the medal in her hand. Sophia stared at it, then up at him. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Absolutely." Alex leaned closer and whispered, "That's love, Mom." The fire crackled, warm and alive. The desert wind hummed through the trees, and for the first time in years, Robert Mason didn't feel like a ghost. He felt home. The memorial that morning felt different. The chapel was quiet, dressed in muted grays and deep green flags. Light filtered through stained glass, scattering color across polished wooden pews. The room smelled of old paper, wax, and pine. Rows of veterans filled the benches, ears squared, hats clutched in aging hands. Some were bent by years. Others stood straight as they had on their first day of duty. Robert sat in the second row, between Sophia and the kids, with Commander Lewis just behind. His uniform was neatly pressed, but his eyes carried the weight of every soul he'd lost. He hadn't stepped into a space like this in over 20 years. At the front, a large black and white photograph of a young man smiled from a frame. It was Marcus Hartley, Robert's best friend, the man who saved his life in that final ambush, and the man whose name had ended up etched in a granite wall alongside his own. Robert's throat tightened as the chaplain began. "We are gathered here not to mourn what was lost," the chaplain said gently, "but to honor what still lives in the spirit of every soldier who stood shoulder to shoulder in the field, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt." Sophia's fingers gently laced with Robert's. Alex sat up straight, a small card tucked in his lap. Emilia held a drawing in her hand, a flag, a medal, and a heart. Then the chaplain called a name. "Alexander Carter Mason." Every head turned. Alex stood up slowly, nerves buzzing in his limbs, but he walked forward, his chin up, steps steady, his voice already rehearsing what his heart hadn't yet let go of. He stopped at the podium and looked out at the sea of weathered faces. "My name is Alex," he said clearly, "and I found a medal. It was dusty and scratched and stuck in the corner of an old backpack. At first, I thought it was just metal." A few veterans smiled, but when I gave it back, Alex continued, I gave someone a part of himself that he thought was gone, and he gave me something too, not just food or a warm bed or stories. He gave me the name I never knew I needed. The room went still. He gave me my dad. Gasps broke out quietly. Robert sat motionless, his hands clenched in his lap. Alex's voice cracked slightly, but he kept going. He could have walked away, pretended I was no one, but he didn't. He stood up, just like he always used to, and now, "I want to say thank you." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the Purple Heart, the same one Robert had once worn close to his chest in Afghanistan, the same one Alex had found. But this time it was pinned on a small wooden stand, engraved with one line in Robert's handwriting, "For the ones who stayed, for the ones who came back." Alex placed it gently on the altar. "This medal doesn't belong to just him anymore," he said. "It belongs to everyone who never gave up on each other." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Some wiped their cheeks with calloused fingers. Others nodded with solemn pride. Robert rose slowly to his feet. He didn't speak right away. He didn't need to. When he stepped beside Alex and placed a hand on his shoulder, it said everything. Then Robert turned to the room. "I died once," he began, his voice low but firm. "Not on the battlefield, but in my heart. When I lost Marcus, when I lost all of you, and for years I stayed quiet, because it felt easier than remembering. His gaze drifted across the crowd. But a boy found my medal, and with it, he found the part of me I thought was buried in the desert. He reminded me that honor isn't about being remembered, it's about remembering others. He looked down at Alex, and sometimes it's about being brave enough to come home. Applause rose slowly, then all at once. Not thunderous, but deep and respectful, the kind that echoes in the soul. As they walked back to their seats, Sophia wiped her eyes. Emilia leaned against her side and whispered, "He did good, huh?" Sophia smiled through tears. He did perfect. After the service, people came up to shake hands. Old men told Alex they wished their sons had half his courage. Veterans embraced Robert like a brother they thought they'd lost to the wind. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in amber and rose, the family stood outside the chapel, bathed in gold. Alex tugged at Robert's sleeve. "Can we go home now?" Robert looked out over the hills, then down at his son. "We already are." The drive back to Robert's home felt quieter than usual, but not in a sad way. More like the kind of silence that hugs you after something meaningful. The kids rode in the back, leaning against each other, their eyes heavy from the long day. Sophia sat up front, her hand resting lightly on the center console, close to Robert's. The city lights faded as the road curved into the hills. Robert's home, no, their home now, came into view, lit with the soft golden glow of porch lights and warm windows. Sophia looked over at him. "You okay?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Better than I've been in years." That night, after dinner and bedtime stories and one last round of giggles from the twins' shared room, Robert stepped onto the back porch. The sky was clear. Stars blinked quietly above the pines. He took a deep breath, letting it fill his chest. In his hand was a small wooden bow, X, the same one that had held his purple heart. He turned it slowly, running his thumb over the carved grain. The box no longer held a medal. Instead, it held the paperwork he'd asked his lawyer to draft. The legal guardianship forms. He hadn't signed them yet. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Sophia stepped out, wrapped in a worn cardigan. She didn't speak at first, just walked up beside him and looked out at the dark stretch of trees. "They're happier than I've ever seen them," she said softly. "They smile, like they're not carrying the world on their backs." He turned to her. "And you?" he asked, his voice tender. She looked up at him with eyes full of memory and hope. "I still wake up expecting the ceiling to leak or the sirens to start, but when I see them sleeping safe, I think maybe I can rest a little too." Robert reached into his pocket and held up a pen. "May I?" Her brows lifted slightly. "You don't have to ask me." "I want to," he said sincerely, "because I didn't get to choose back then. I was just gone. But now I get to choose, and I'm choosing this." He placed the forms on the table. The porch light flickered slightly. Then, slowly, Robert Mason signed his name. When he finished, he looked up at her. "I want them to know that I didn't just show up for the ceremony. I showed up for them, every day." She blinked, her hand reaching for his. They didn't speak again for a while, just stood there, fingers intertwined, as the night wrapped gently around them. The next morning, the kids found a surprise waiting on the kitchen table. 2 small velvet boxes. Inside each, a chain with a tag. Dog tags, not real ones, but close. On Alex's, it read, "Alex Carter Mason, brave by nature." On Emilia's, "Emilia Grace Mason, heart of the family." They gasped, looking up at Robert with wide, sparkling eyes. "Are these for us?" Alex asked. "Only if you want them," Robert said, crouching to their level. "Because from today forward, I'm not just someone who knew your mom. I'm your dad. If you'll have me." Amelia threw her arms around his neck so fast she almost knocked him over. "I already did," she whispered. Alex nodded, blinking back emotion. "Me too." Later that afternoon, Robert took them to the military base, his old one. They walked the parade field, visited the museum, and paused by the memorial wall. When they reached the plaque bearing Marcus Hartley's name, Alex placed a folded note under it. "I told him," he said quietly, "told him I found you." Robert nodded, eyes stinging. "He would have liked you," he whispered. "He saved me so I could find you, and now I get to do the same for someone else." Back home, they built a small garden behind the house. At the center, a stone pillar. On it was a plaque that read, "This metal brought us together. Love made it stay." Every evening they'd water the flowers together. Sophia would sit on the bench with a cup of tea, and Robert would teach the kids how to build a fire, tie a knot, or read a compass. Not because they needed to, but because that's what families do. They pass on the things that kept them alive, and remind each other why it was worth surviving. The sun was setting gently over the quiet neighborhood. Orange and gold light spilled across the porch, catching the edge of the small monument in the backyard, the one with the words that had come to define everything. "This metal brought us together. Love made it stay." It had been 6 weeks since Robert signed the guardianship papers. 6 weeks since Sophia, Alex, and Amelia moved in. 6 weeks that changed his life more than war, more than business, more than anything else ever had. Inside the house, the twins were helping set the dinner table. Their laughter floated through the open window, light and unburdened. They sounded like kids again. Robert stepped into the kitchen just as Sophia placed the last pot on the stove. "Smells like heaven," he said warmly. She smiled without turning. "Well, it's a team effort. Amelia insisted on seasoning the chicken her way." He chuckled. "Which way is that?" "With feeling, apparently." The four of them sat down to eat, passing bowls and pouring lemonade into mismatched cups. They talked about school, about the letter Amelia got from her favorite teacher and the new friend Alex had made on the bus. But after dessert, Robert stood up and cleared his throat. The kids quieted instantly. His tone was calm, but there was something deeply sincere in his eyes. "I want to ask you both for something," he began, gently. Alex and Amelia exchanged glances. Sophia watched quietly from her seat, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I know I've only been in your life for a short time," Robert continued, "but every day I've spent with you has shown me what it means to really live, what it means to be more than just someone with medals or money. I want to be your father, not just legally, but truly, fully, always." Alex's lip trembled slightly, but he nodded. Robert reached behind his chair and pulled out a small, square box, different from the one he'd kept the medal in. Inside were 2 new Purple Heart replicas, this time etched with their names beneath his own. "I had these made," he said softly, "because I realized this medal never really belonged to just me. It was always meant to find its way back to the reason I survived." He placed one in Alex's hands and one in Amelia's. "You are my reason." Neither child said anything at first. They just stared at the medals, shining gently in the warm glow of the kitchen. Then Amelia threw herself into his arms. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. Alex leaned in slowly, more reserved, but just as sincere. He hugged Robert fiercely, like a soldier returning home. Later that week, at the memorial gathering for veterans at the local base, Robert stood beside Alex as he stepped to the podium. The crowd hushed. Alex unfolded a note from his jacket pocket. His voice was quiet, but clear. "I used to think a hero was someone who wore a uniform," he began. his words trembling just slightly. Someone who ran into danger and came out stronger, but I know now, sometimes a hero is someone who walks back into your life when he could have stayed gone, someone who chooses to carry your weight even when it's not his to carry. He paused, glancing toward Robert. This man didn't just give me his name. He gave me a chance, and he taught me that real courage isn't never being afraid. It's loving someone enough to stand still and stay. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the ceremony, back at home, the family sat together on the porch. Sophia leaned her head on Robert's shoulder. The kids were nestled under a shared blanket. The stars blinked above, soft and slow. "I never thought this would be my life," Robert said quietly. Sophia looked up. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He chuckled. "It's the best thing, and I'd trade every contract, every promotion, every moment of glory, just to have one more night like this." She reached for his hand and held it. They stayed like that for a long time. Not needing words. Just the hum of peace. Just the quiet weight of a metal that had once meant sacrifice, and now meant love. The end.